What's up, guys? This is the last video on the motor swap. Just finished up getting the trans back together, so I'm waiting for that to dry, the RTV to dry, so I can torque it down, and then we'll be ready to put it on the motor. So while that dries, I'm going to go ahead and get this rear motor mount taken off, because that was just a temporary setup I had. I got my CPE one rebuilt, so I'm going to be putting that back on. And then I also got to swap my insert out of this blown motor mount into the new one. So I'm going to do that while the RTV dries, and then once it's dry we'll torque it down and start putting the trans back on the motor. So the trans is all put back together. All of these outer bolts you torque to 32 Newton meters, including these 4 ones on the inside, and then the slave cylinder bolts are torqued to 11 Newton meters. Make sure you put thread locker on those. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out the motor mount, and I still haven't even swapped this. I've got to swap that part over, and then I believe we will be good to go to mate the trans back up to the motor. So I went ahead and put the belt on here. I'd recommend getting a new Serpentine belt whenever you do this. You'll need a stretch belt install tool. I got a kit for a few bucks of these metal ones. Don't get a plastic one, it'll probably break. Get a metal one, it's like $5 on Amazon. And it also came with this removal piece, except I just cut the old belts. But you'll just stick the install piece in there like that, and then just turn the crank by hand, and it'll stretch the belt and the tensioner and get the belt on there. I just went ahead and did that since it'll be easier not in the car, and then the AC compressor belt we will have to do in the car, but I want to just go ahead and get this one on so it's on there. So yeah, so the trans is back on the motor. I just had the engine hoist lowered down a little bit and then used the jack to jack up the trans and get it aligned, and then thread the bolts in. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't the hardest thing in the world. And then I didn't torque those. I just hit them with the old Ugga machine and some thread locker. That was good enough for me, because I did not want to go through torquing all of those, because a wrench doesn't even fit in all the spots, so, or a ratchet. So now it's time to put the motor back in the car. Everything's pretty much good to go. I'm just going to put the V-band, the new V-band on the downpipe, and the seal for it. Just so that's already back there, and then I'm going to start putting it in and try to get it held in by the 2 side motor mounts first, and then I'll go in underneath there and install the rear motor mount. Alright, so the motor is back in. It is held in by just the 2 side motor mounts there, and it wasn't too bad. It took me like 30 minutes. I just used the engine hoist to hold up the motor, and then I used my low profile jack on the trans, and I got this motor mount in first and then this one. It wasn't too bad. Just make sure you get the downpipe aligned in the back, which I did, and I just bolted in the V-band for that. And I'm not going to put in the rear motor mount yet, because that's going to block my access to some stuff back there, so I'm going to leave that open until I've got everything hooked up in the back and I've got the axles in, which is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to put the axles back in and get the suspension all buttoned back up, so that is out of the way, and then the trans will be sealed so that I can put in the trans fluid, which there's a plug right there, and I'd much rather put it in from the top here than try to pump it in from the side. So I want to go ahead and get the trans filled up with trans fluid, and then I guess I'll move on from there and see where I want to go next. But I'm loving the look of the red valve cover. The engine bay is going to look a lot nicer now and a lot less boring. But yep, I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. I can go ahead and plug in the high pressure, or maybe low pressure, I don't know, into the high pressure fuel pump. Get that fuel line in there. And yeah, it's just going to be a matter of plugging everything in and figuring out where it goes. Can reattach the shifter cables. That'll be pretty easy. Then there's just these coolant lines that all go in various different places. That one goes there, I remember. And that clamp is stuck. But yeah, so I'm going to just go ahead and start putting it back together. Alright, so both sides are put back together. I accidentally messed up the threads on the tie rods because I hammered them out. Don't do that. But I went and got a tap and die set and got it fixed up. So now the suspension is all buttoned back up. Axles are in. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up the trans with this top drain plug here. And I guess we will see if anything leaks out. So I got the trans filled with transmission fluid, and the motor is filled with some cheap 5W30 and some engine flush that I'm just going to run for like 10 minutes in the motor and then drain out to clean it because I don't know what crap has been in this motor before. And then I'll fill it up with some nice oil after the first start. So I'm going to go ahead and move the wiring harness over here and start plugging stuff in, mainly just everything right here so that I can get the intake manifold put on, and then we'll go from there. I'm not really going to show as much of a step-by-step of this because it's just figuring out where stuff goes. If you took it apart, it's got to go back together. So yep, that's what I'll be working on here, just getting the harness all plugged back in and getting all the hoses and wires and vacuum lines routed. And now that I've refilled the transmission, I can put on the shifter cables. I'll have to do a neutral reset. I'm gonna have to bleed the brakes or bleed the clutch. So that's what we're looking at. All right, so it is together enough to where I'm gonna try to crank it. I got coolant filled up. Oil is all filled up. All the hoses are connected, I think. It leaked a little bit over here, but I think it was just because I overfilled it and it poured out because it stopped. It's leaking oil because I accidentally poked a hole in the oil filter, but hopefully this old oil filter will hold together just enough for a quick start before I swap out the good oil and good filter. But yeah, I've got everything hooked up, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the fuel pump fuse and then crank it a few times and see what happens, and then I'll try and actually start it. So it cranked just fine. I forgot that I did not bleed the clutch, so I'm going to bleed that. I think you just got to connect a vacuum or like a little line to this and then loosen that a little bit, and then just use one of those like hand squeezing vacuum pumps, which I have. So I'm going to go ahead and bleed that real quick, and then we'll be back to trying to start it up with the fuel pump fuse in there. So I got the clutch bled, I think. It feels softer than I remember it being, but maybe I'm just not remembering how it was correctly. Because it feels linear. It doesn't really feel like there's air in the line. It's not like spongy, it's just squishy. So I don't really know. But yeah, now it is time to try and do the first start. So we'll see if it runs, squirts fluid anywhere, or whatever it does. So it's getting there. It only had didn't have very much fuel in it, so I had to put some 89 in it. So it's probably not gonna like that, but it should run. I guess we'll keep seeing. Oh, it wants to. There we go, it's running. clutch feels more normal now. It's got a bunch of check engine lights, gas light, airbag light because the sensors aren't plugged in, but and the washer fluid. Yeah, it's dumping coolant everywhere. That's probably just because it started up with, yeah, it was from this thing does not stay in. I guess I'll have to figure that out. But it runs on the first try, so I'll take that. It's definitely spewing oil out of that oil filter, but I kind of expected that. So it's a bit of a mess, but it runs. So I'll see if I can get this figured out here, because this line is broken, so it doesn't want to stay in there. But yeah, I'll go ahead and refill the coolant and put that line in there and see if it'll actually stay running. So I started it up and let it idle. It's very smoky in here right now, probably because there's still a bunch of oil in the exhaust and stuff, but yeah. Oh, that's crazy, the coolant changed color. But yeah, it's together. Let's see, the transmission, it wasn't feeling right, but I just thought that's probably because the rear motor mount's not in, so I'm shifting and the whole thing's moving around and not in the right position, because everything feels right over here. So I probably need to do that and then put the redo a neutral reset after I put the rear motor mount in. But it runs, so I guess I'm going to start putting it back together as much as I can, and then I guess I'll have to figure out. It had like 20 codes, but I'm assuming that's just because everything's still unplugged. So I'm gonna start getting everything unplugged. I'll disconnect the battery so the whole thing can reset. And then I'll need to go get some good gas filled up in there for it. I'll probably go get like some 93 so that it's got something good to run off of mixed with that 89. And then I'll get it to a gas station once it runs and drives and get some E30 in it so it can be retuned. But yep, that's pretty much what we're looking at right now. So I guess I'll continue messing with it. I don't really even know what to do next. So I got the majority of everything buttoned back up, about as good as it's going to be for now. I'm about to start it up, let it idle for a while, and then I'm going to go take it on a test drive. I put the rear motor mount in and redid a neutral reset, and the trans feels better, so hopefully that stays that way, and I put the transmission back together right, because if not, I'm going to jump off a cliff. My little cap here broke, the little Mentos cap I had. This coolant line is broken, so it's held in by a bungee cord. I ordered another one of those, but the engine bay is looking real nice now with the white intake and the catch can and clamps and a valve cover, all that. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to go ahead. I got the oil put in, new oil filter, and some nice Mobil 1 oil a buddy gave me. I normally run the Motul stuff, but since I had that, I put it in there. Oh, I do need to tighten down that motor mount there because I loosened that to put the rear motor mount in. But yeah, everything is good to go. Intercooler's on, all the sensors are plugged in, and miraculously I only have 3 plugs left, the fog lights and the 2 headlights. Everything else is plugged in. I've checked everywhere. There's no more loose cables, so everything is looking to be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and button up a few more things here, idle it, and then while it's idling I'm going to put the wheels back on and then hopefully take it for a test drive.